Hi, everyone. This is Jason Burak of Wall Street from Main Street. Welcome back to another Wall Street from Main Street podcast interview. Today's special guest is a returning guest. He has hosted the Kennedy Financial Podcast with his brother, John. No, not John F. Kennedy, another Kennedy. And he's also the author of a beginner personal finance book that also has Austrian School Economics, free market economic principles called Financial Judo, which talks about owning gold and silver, cryptocurrencies, and free market, as well as valuable personal finance lessons. So Phil Kennedy, thank you for joining me again.
Jason, thanks so much for having me back on the show. It's a good time to be here.
Yes. And Phil, you are one of the rare people in our space that actually has one foot in precious metals and another foot in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, because as you know, you interview a lot of the same people I do, that a lot of the people that you often interview don't want to mix the two. They don't want to be diversified. They tend to either be in one or the other. So precious metals have been in a bear market for a while now. Basically, I would say since 2011. They are showing a little bit of strength here, rallying with the dollar, but Bitcoin and cryptocurrency have had, basically a bloodbath since January of last year. So how do you keep the faith?
Well, that's a great question, Jason. It's tough, but I've always been of the opinion that I like to buy assets when they're low and sell them when they're high. I work with people in an office just like everyone else. Kennedy Financial is not my day job. Hopefully it will be one day. I do have another day job as a forensic accountant, and I work with ordinary people that most of your audience probably has in their life too. And they are excited about the stock market. At least they were prior to, say, November. And that's where everyone needs to be. And no matter how hard you try to explain to them that, hey, these prices are outrageous, and the only reason stocks were able to get so high in the first place is because we had artificially low interest rates and quantitative easing. What happens if that goes away? So I've always been, I stopped buying stocks when Dow hit around 20,000. And since then, from my 401k perspective, I've been in cash. And when I tell people that, they're like, gosh, that's so silly. You've missed out on all these gains. Well, sure. But who could have anticipated that the market would have gone up another 45% after Trump became president? I don't think anyone saw that coming. And I really believe that it is only as a result of the tools and mechanisms that a president has as a result of the access to the plunge protection team and all sorts of methods that we mere plebes are unaware of. So I like to buy things when they're cheap. I still think gold and silver, especially silver, are extraordinarily cheap. I thought silver was cheap when it was in the 20s and 30s. And I think Bitcoin is now cheap. And especially some of these quality altcoins, I think they're cheap. Now, I want to remind the audience that I was on your show approximately a year ago. I was on December 12th, and the coin market cap, Jason, was just about to cross the $500 million mark.
Billion, you mean, right?
Yeah, wait. Yeah, 500 billion. Thanks for the correction. It was just about to cross the 500 billion mark. And everybody's starting to get excited. I was getting phone calls from people I hadn't heard from in a while, asking, hey, what is this crypto thing? How do I open a Coinbase account and everything like that? And during that show, you and I were kind of having a debate. Is this a bubble? Have things really gotten ahead of themselves? You were starting to hear stories of valets talking about some of the money they'd made selling cryptocurrencies. And I was arguing that really Bitcoin isn't a bubble, or wasn't a bubble at that time, but rather a reflection of the bubble. And then we got off that call and we celebrated the holidays and we watched the market go up like literally another near 100%. It got over 800 billion. So not quite 100%, but it went up by a long shot. And at that point, I started to get worried myself. I saw all the ICOs that were coming out of nowhere, and I decided personally, I moved all of my altcoins into Bitcoin. And I did not think at that time, I was tempted to do one of two things. I was either going to move into altcoin, or I was going Bitcoin, or I was going to move into a stable coin like Tether. And I was very concerned because of all of the allegations that Tether doesn't have the dollars that are supposedly backing up the cryptocurrency. So I just hunkered down in Bitcoin. And I'll be frank with your audience, Jason. I did not anticipate another 85% decline. If you had held a gun to my head back then, I probably would have said, yeah, a 50% decline is possible. I mean, after an epic run like that, I mean, Litecoin was up like 4,000% during that time. It went from $2 to nearly 400. So I'm content with gains like that. And I'm content with a 50% loss after gains like that. But I personally did not see this 85% reduction. So hopefully your audience didn't run out and buy cryptocurrency after that interview. I think, we're always very upfront in saying, hey, this is not financial advice. This is our opinion. And today I have to be truthful. I'm even more excited about cryptocurrency now than I was back then because of all the things that are coming out in the blockchain technology space.
So what's coming out in the blockchain technology space that has you interested?
Well, we had a big revelation back in October that Fidelity is standing up its very own institutional platform. Fidelity is the biggest name in this space. They have $7.2 trillion in assets under management. And the news that they are now looking at Bitcoin and altcoins and blockchain technology as a potential area of investment for their clients, to me, is pretty exciting news. On top of that, you have Bakkt announcing that they're coming out in late January of next year with a regulator approved, they're going to be a regulator approved custodian of cryptocurrencies, because this is the big concern. I myself have managed to lose a little bit of Bitcoin, and it is a very frustrating experience, especially when you slowly realize that you sent it to a wrong address. And this happens every single day. It happens to people who've even been in the space for a long time. I had a guest on my show who is kind of a household name in the Bitcoin space, and he candidly said to me, hey, look, Phil, don't feel bad. We've all lost Bitcoin. But if your client is buying Bitcoin, there's not going to be any excuse. And I think it is only with a company like Bakkt, that's a regulated custodian, that most investors will start to feel comfortable knowing that their cryptocurrency is safe and they don't have to worry about handling it. Just like if they buy a gold and silver ETF, they don't actually have to take possession of the metal and store it in a safe and worry about that it might get stolen by someone breaking into their house. It's the same sort of thing. So I think these are probably two of the biggest announcements. And a third announcement that excites me for in the long run is this company, Blockstream. They just launched, I think, their fourth or fifth satellite. And this is going to allow people to complete Bitcoin transactions around the entire globe, with the exception of Antarctica and Greenland. So if you're in one of those two places, I'm sorry, you're out of luck. But for the rest of us, this is great news, because this is the beauty of cryptocurrency in the first place, right? A decentralized, immutable ledger that is censorship resistant and allows anyone in the world to send a transaction person to person without an intermediary, and no one can stop it. So for me, this just spells out freedom. I think it's the most exciting thing we've come across. And I probably said the same thing last year when we talked. This is it is more exciting to me than when I first logged on AOL and started getting emails and communicating over instant messenger. Bitcoin will be the thing that I tell my grandkids about. I was there at the onset, when it was less than $1 trillion market cap, and there were all these fluctuations, and there were 30% up days like today, and 50% down months. And, it's not for the faint of heart. I know that most people, your listeners, hear that and they say, well, that's not for me. And that's understandable. And I would not put too many eggs in this basket if it's not for you. But if that sounds exciting to you, I think this is the greatest opportunity in the history of mankind for people to take control of their monetary sovereignty.
So what interests me about the Bitcoin market is that, if it was a commodity, it wouldn't have stayed below the cost of production for too long. The cost of Bitcoin mining, the producers, when I interviewed Frank Holmes, who was chairman of Hive Blockchain Technologies earlier this year, he said their production cost was around like 6,500, 6,600. I was reading estimates that they were, some of the costs were by credible research firms that were 8,300. So the production cost for Bitcoin miners, commercial scale ones, was between like 8,300 a coin and 6,600 a coin. I thought, around 6,000 a coin, maybe a little bit below the production cost would hold. It did not. It blew out bad. And so, Bitcoin got briefly below 3,000. Now it's rallied today when we're recording this on Thursday, December 20th. It's a little over 4,000 now. But there's research estimates, Phil, that over 800,000 Bitcoin and crypto miners. I think a lot of the ones in this estimate, though, are actually in China, have gone bankrupt or walked away. If you look on eBay, there's like used ASIC mining equipment that's on sale at deep discounts. There's pictures and video all over the internet of like Chinese Bitcoin miners that are either like destroying their Bitcoin mining equipment, or they're paying like someone to haul away the junk, or they're trying to get whatever they can for it, like liquidate for cash, for scrap, or to just sell it off for parts. So do you think then that this is a capitulation sign?
I do. That's my opinion. I mean, we've seen other Bitcoin bubbles in the past. I'll share a few with you here. In 2011, Bitcoin topped out at $30 and then fell all the way down to $2. That was a 93% decline. In April 2013, just in the span of 2 days, Bitcoin fell from 260 down to 45. That was an 83% decline. I think the worst trend was through the Mt. Gox revelations when they went belly up. From November 2013 to January 15, Bitcoin fell from 1150 down to 170. That was an 85% decline. And now here we have another 85% decline, 20 grand down to 3.2. So I think for those who were early adopters, they're used to just riding it out. That's how they came up with the term HODL, hold on for dear life. I think, though, that when we do have a pullback like this, this creates an excellent opportunity for investors. But obviously for miners, this is a nightmare. I saw a video the other day on this YouTube channel called Digital Gold. And you got to really tip your hat to this guy. He had invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in mining equipment and basically had to sell everything but the kids to make his last rent payment, or on his lease space there. Ooh. So he was selling everything left and right. And this is what you're seeing, right? The articles about the 800,000 Chinese miners. But the beauty of Bitcoin is that the required hash rate automatically fluctuates to accommodate the loss in price. I think it's analyzed every 2 weeks. And so the amount of hash power you need to mine the next Bitcoin is reduced. And then as more miners come on, it gets more difficult to mine the next Bitcoin. And that's really how it's supposed to work. That it's kind of like the best system ever created in terms of weeding out weak hands and people who probably never should have been miners in the first place. And it allocates those losses accordingly. And that's unfortunate. I mean, it was gut-wrenching to watch this guy's video. But frankly, it's necessary because we did get ahead of ourselves, obviously. I mean, I didn't think so. I thought Bitcoin was a buy at 6,000. I happened to be buying then. I also bought on the way down. I bought Litecoin in the 20s and in the 30s and in the 40s. But this market, Jason, I want to tell it to you and your audience like this. Imagine if the U.S. stock market traded 24/7, 365. It never had a market cap of more than $1 trillion. Most of the market participants were under the age of 30 and had very little investment experience. And it was all based on an asset that no one really knew the real value of. There were no financial statements to evaluate the worth of a going concern. And that's essentially what we have. That's the marketplace that Bitcoin operates. And you saw it in November when the volume of transactions on Bithumb, a South Korean exchange, were just through the roof, and the price of everything, it was a fire sale. And I could just imagine that these young South Koreans, maybe they were in college or even high school, were just hitting that sell button like crazy because they had never experienced these kind of losses. So I go different places to get a feel for the market. I didn't really buy. I bought very little Bitcoin over $10,000. I really started buying around the 8,500 mark, and I bought even more at 6,000, and I bought more at 4. I'm down, right? But as I said at the onset of the interview, I'm in this for the long run, just like I am with gold and silver. I don't mind. I don't mind buying things I believe in when no one else does. And no one really believes in crypto right now overall. There's a couple websites I like to go to. I go to things as simple as Google Trends. The term Bitcoin capitulation has never been Googled more often than within the last month. The term Bitcoin is dead has never been Googled more than within the last month. So your average crypto investor has thrown in the towel. They think it's never coming back. And I think that is an unwise assumption. I agree with the chairman of the New York Stock Exchange that cryptocurrency is here to stay. And I think that this was just another short-term bubble that we will forget. And I run these numbers all the time. Jason, if you're interested to hear, if we have another pump like we did last year, then Bitcoin potentially could go up to 75,000 and then fall back down to like 11.5. So obviously, if that happens, people will say, hey, Bitcoin is dead. I'm never going to buy another Bitcoin. I bought it at 75 and it fell all the way to 11. But what if you got on this train, say, 2 years ago when Bitcoin was $800? Are you going to be shaken out? So Bitcoin is up 400% from 2 years ago. So I think for those of us who are gold and silver hodlers, this is nothing. I mean, I've been hodling my physical silver since 2011. I didn't sell it. It's still in a safe in an undisclosed location that I'm not going to share with you or anyone else. But I think that for gold and silver bugs, you've built up the muscles that are necessary to hodl Bitcoin. And when everyone's talking about it and you see Brian Kelly touting it on CNBC, that's not the time to buy. That's probably your sell signal. And now when you see these Google Trends at all-time highs, there's another website that I like to go to where they measure sentiment based on several different factors. It's at something called alternative.me. And they've got this fear and greed index. And based on several sentiment factors like volatility, market momentum, social media, and surveys, and other trends like the Google Trends I mentioned, they put out a number each day that'll tell you, hey, how do investors feel about the market? And we've been in a state of fear or extreme fear ever since November 15th. And that's when I've been backing up the truck and buying more. So keep an eye on things like that. This is the purest market in the world, Jason. This is, I think, the one last place where, yes, there is manipulation. There's no doubt about that, especially when you've got big egos involved like Craig Wright and Roger Ver and others. But also, as a result of being a market that Jerome Powell, people like Janet Yellen, they don't care about. There's no plunge protection team coming to save crypto. This is a market purely based on people's pocket change and what, do they put a little money in through apps like the Square app or the Cash app produced by Square. No one's going to come ride in to save crypto because everyone's 401k is on the line. So that also gives us plenty of opportunities. And that's really why I'm still a believer here, even though it's been a rough year. I think it isn't going anywhere. There's a lot of potential ahead. And I think in the next year or two, we will see a plus $1 trillion crypto market cap.
There's a lot of chart damage in a lot of the cryptocurrencies, so it may take more than a year or two. Could take 2 or 3 years, maybe 4. But yeah, I think a lot of Wall Street money, like you said, and a lot of big technology companies are still making investments into blockchain, not necessarily crypto. But before I ask you if you think Bitcoin is manipulated, let me add a couple points. So you talked about, long-term investing. I think some of the main things that people do not understand about long-term investing is it requires a lot of patience, which most human beings do not have. It requires a lot of discipline, which again, most adult human beings do not have. And most importantly, you have to control your emotions. So in order to buy things when they're cheap, normally as a long-term investor, where you make the biggest profits is when you buy things. Because I could tell you almost everyone, whether you're an amateur or you're doing this part-time or you're a professional, they almost always screw up when to sell. So when you buy something, if you think it's at a good price and cheap, or you keep accumulating something that you think is cheap, that's normally over the long run, stocks that are on sale, rental properties, different types of assets. Normally how you, in the long run, make good long-term investments and profit well. But I think a lot of capital, Phil, went into Bitcoin mining. And like you said, it was getting rich quick. And we've seen this from the earnings announcements from the chip companies. So AMD, which is the large processor company, and NVIDIA, which is the graphics card company. I think they make processors as well. I believe AMD is going to have significant losses on their crypto because they're ramping that thing up, their crypto sales for mining. And I believe they may lose a couple $1 billion on that part of their business. And NVIDIA, I think, is going to lose just under $1 billion. So, and the discounts that they have for the new equipment that they're producing, it went from a really high price. I think one of the ASIC machines, the newer ones from NVIDIA, I think was initially 800, and they've already discounted it down to like 400 or 500. And NVIDIA is doing very similar discounts. So, it's going to take the market a while for those things to work off, but eventually they probably will work off. And I don't think that people, especially Americans, Phil, are really pro technology. So I don't see people giving up on this type of technology permanently.
No, I don't. And I especially don't see it in Asia. I think that's honestly what's going to create the next bull market. Sure, a lot of people got stung, but South Koreans, Japanese, the Chinese, they'll eventually pile in again. And once things really get overheated, you'll start to see the reverse. You'll start to see the volumes go nuts on BitThumb and other Asian exchanges. And that'll be your clue that it's time to get out. But I think that in the next bull run, I do think we'll see a new all-time high in Bitcoin. I think we'll see a new all-time high in Litecoin, maybe even next year. Well, not a new all-time high in Litecoin, but I think we might see a Litecoin pump next year because it's having in the summer. I think they say they anticipate it'll be around August 7th that there'll be a Litecoin halving. And the last time that happened, it had like a 6 or 7x pump over the course of a few days. So these are things to keep an eye on and plan for in advance, because your average Asian college student isn't really thinking about these things. They just hear somebody like Roger Ver suddenly saying that Bitcoin Cash is the new Bitcoin, and then they all pile in with over the course of 3 weeks. And inevitably, it's just a classic bubble. It's going to burst. You can see it every time on the chart. But, Bitcoin should allocate gains and losses accordingly, just like the gold market would. I don't know if you still watch that show Gold Rush, but I do. And Parker's still there. Tony Beats is still there. There's another guy who's branched off on his own. It's going to be interesting to see if he makes it or not. But guess who's not there, Jason? The Hoffmans are no longer there. Well, why is that? Well, because they were pretty terrible gold miners. And that's really all we witnessed over the course of the several seasons that they were on that show. I think they probably only made their money from selling sweatshirts and the media through the media that was on the Discovery Channel, but they didn't make any money from mining gold. So that's the way a real market should function. We don't want people pursuing projects that have no profit in the long run. We want people who are astute. They manage their business with good economics. They apply resources where they are most efficient, and they are able to keep a going concern, a business, for the long haul. So on the one hand, I do feel bad for people who invested a lot of money in Bitcoin mining, but on the other, this is good for the market in the long run to purge people and businesses that have no real reason for being there. So things have been really bad over the last year, especially since I think a lot of us didn't see the plunge from 6,000 down to nearly 3. But I gotta stress, I'm still very optimistic for the future.
And speaking of mining, Phil, the gold and silver miners, they've been in a bear market basically for 7 years now. There was a little rally at the end of 2015 and 2016, and the miners diluted like crazy to survive. And then the shares ended up going back down. The metals prices have started to hold up a little bit, but there's going to be a culling of the herd in the next 2 or 3 years if the metals prices don't rise, because the miners are basically out of ways to cut costs. Another thing I'm seeing with sentiment for gold and silver, Phil, did you see the guy who put videotape online of him throwing out all of his silver coins and bars into a trash can?
No. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So he bought like, I think in 2011 when silver was above 40, and he just went crazy with his purchases. He didn't dollar cost average. He didn't put a little bit of his paycheck every month, his savings, like into a couple silver coins or anything. He was chasing the price higher and hoping to get rich quick, and he got screwed over, and he was just holding it all the way down, hoping it would rally, I guess, back to the price he paid, and he just gave up and just videotaped himself throwing the silver into the garbage. But what's your opinion of the crypto pumper? So Brian Kelly, Peter Schiff called him out on his Twitter. Brian Kelly, for those of you or listeners who are not familiar, he wrote a book about Bitcoin. It was not very good. It got really horrible reviews, actually. And he's been pumping Bitcoin, I think, for the last 1.5 to 2 years. And basically, it's just come out for like the last 10 months, every day for the last 10 months. First of all, Brian Kelly's on CNBC at least once a day, every day, normally Fast Money. But basically, he just confessed that he's been net short Bitcoin and dumping all of his crypto with his managed money while he goes on live TV and pumps it. So do you think then that, I think best case scenario for him is it's really, really unethical. And I think worst case, he's probably committing crimes.
Right. Peter made that point. I think it's an excellent point. I think there are a lot of evil people in this sector. I mean, just darn right evil. And that's another thing I want to mention is
in Bitcoin or the financial industry in general?
Specifically in the cryptocurrency community. Yeah, but definitely in the financial sector. But a lot of people have come out of the woodwork. I think, as Buffett always says, right, when the tide goes out, you see who's swimming naked. I think, but in the cryptocurrency space, when the tide goes out, you really see who the true evildoers are. I think one of them is McAfee. I thought, he had a lot of interesting things to say in the run up, but then he suddenly came out with like this coin of the day on Twitter. And I think a lot of poor, unfortunate souls got suckered in that. So I would steer clear away from him and anything he has to say. And I think another nefarious person in all of this, there are two guys. I think Roger Ver and Craig Wright are more about ego and less about spreading monetary sovereignty around the world. So I don't put much stock in what either of those guys have to say. If I had to say, follow somebody with real character, I think Charlie Lee has always been in this game for the right reasons. Trace Mayer is another exceptional person that I would follow. Jimmy Song, his heart seems to be in the right place. Jameson Lopp, he's another good one. But those are the good ones, and I'm sure there's plenty more I could sit here and talk about. But be very careful. Anybody who tells you they know where the price is going, steer clear from them. The one thing I will say, though, I wanted to kind of talk about some of the good, the bad, and the ugly in the crypto space. I know we've covered a lot already, but there is more. As bad as things are, as bad as things have been over the last year, gold bugs still have to appreciate the fact that Bitcoin is still 3 times the price of gold. To me, that's an astounding achievement when you think about how the market really has everything against it that it could possibly have thrown at it. I mean, the CME shorts came on, the futures contracts. It's bashed in the mainstream media. Only terrorists use Bitcoin. It trades 24/7, like I said earlier. I mean, imagine if the stock market was open right now, Jason. I mean, we saw things imploding. Imagine if it was over the weekend and there was a government shutdown. I mean, you could really see things just taking off to the downside, and there'd be nothing anyone could do about it. These algos would go haywire, and so the cryptocurrency has so much going against it, and despite all that, still 3 times the price of gold, still up 400% from 2 years ago. It's even up 30% since you asked me to come on the show back on Sunday. So, there's a lot of reasons to still be excited. The bad, though, obviously, is anybody who came into the market in the last year is probably not going to come back for quite a while. And I do sympathize with that. I mean, the only people that have really made money is this guy, Dow. He had some huge short position that just was recently revealed, and he was interviewed on Bloomberg, and he said that he refers to Bitcoin. He started shorting Bitcoin around the top, and he just recently closed out that short position, and he referred to Bitcoin as faith-based, and that the reason for last year's bubble was largely because people just believed in a narrative, and that a failure on the part of many traders to actually understand the underlying technology led to a more violent bubble. And I think he's right. I think a lot of people were in the market for the wrong reasons, and they're probably not coming back for a long time. In fact, they're probably not going to come back until Bitcoin is above 20,000 again. And that's a shame. Hopefully we can reach some of those folks and tell them not to be buying in some hyperbolic move. The other thing, the ugly, it continues to be volatile. I don't think that you're going to get your mother or someone over the age of 50 to be interested in something that has these kind of swings. I mean, even today, Bitcoin Cash is up like 40%, but that's after it declined 50%, or I think it was down 80% just in the last weeks in November. And then furthermore, you still have, CNBC pumping it, and then you find out that Brian Kelly is simultaneously shorting it. It doesn't create a atmosphere of trust within the community. So we'll see what needs to happen, what's going to happen in the months and years ahead. But as far as the technology goes, I'm still a huge optimist, and I think it will continue to persevere. I think, unfortunately, a lot of people are going to suffer big losses until eventually there is some kind of institutional leveling of the field. And that's going to be trillions of dollars. I think it's going to have at least a $5 or $10 trillion market cap before we really stop seeing these huge 85% corrections. And nobody's going to stick around in the long run if that continues to happen. Sure, it'll make some of us very wealthy, but there'll be way more losers if that continues to be the case.
Did you see some of those screenshots of direct messages that John McAfee was like negotiating over like his price to pump some of these like altcoins and initial coin offerings?
No, that's pretty scary, but I believe it.
Yeah, so he wanted, I'm trying to remember the exact number. I think it was like $200,000 worth of Bitcoin and then 25% of all the tokens to pump the shit out of it. And supposedly, I know someone who used to work with him, won't name names, but I know someone who worked with him for a while, like directly every day. And supposedly over like the 2-year span when crypto was in its hay market and he was like raising his fees and doing this almost every day, he made at one point, he made over $1 billion total. So I don't know if he cashed out, but he took it to he pumped everything for all it was worth.
Wow.
So,
that's a nice payday.
Yep. But I mean, he's a pumper though, so I don't know. You can't really trust him. I mean, I was going to ask you also, before we talk about if Bitcoin's manipulated, let's get your opinion in on all these, Bitcoin and crypto pumper channels. So there was hundreds of these things all over YouTube. They added like 100,000 subscribers or more very quickly. I think, the titles were ridiculous that like, this coin's going to go up to $10,000. And I think some of these guys, from speaking with Tone Vase, he told me, because he was challenging some of these guys, that some of these guys were spending over $10,000 marketing budget to pump like their channel and their video to grow quick.
Well, I didn't know that. I believe it though, because a lot of these channels came out of the woodwork with 100,000 subscribers all of a sudden, and some of them are worthwhile. I mean, the guy who does Crypto Daily, I don't know if anybody has seen his videos. They're phenomenal, and it's obvious that he puts a lot of work into it, and it's also evident that his heart is in this. He's not a hypocrite. He's in this for all the right reasons. He believes in the technology. I don't know if I could point the finger at myself a little bit too. We were definitely talking about crypto a lot more during the run up, and I even was doing a crypto corner once a week, and I haven't been doing that as recently because it just really wasn't getting the views and no one seemed to care, even though my heart is still in it. I think the fundamentals are even better than they were a year ago as far as the long-term gains and sustainability of the cryptocurrency space. But it really was interesting. And in fact, there was one channel in particular that I used to listen to every week. I think his channel was called Crypto Trader. And he had a 4-month hiatus. And then all of a sudden he came on and he said, "Hey, I'm done. This is it. I really never cared about crypto in the late innings." And it was kind of shocking. And you could tell by the comments in the video that a lot of his followers were really upset by that. So I think that's just another form of capitulation. It's not just all these miners going belly up. It's also the channels that have decided, hey, this isn't for me and I don't really care. I was just in it because other people were interested and it was just a fad. But the good news is they showed their true colors, and they're going to have a hard time during the next bull run coming back. I don't think they're going to be accepted. I think this is a blemish on their reputation.
Yeah, I agree. And I haven't noticed as many of these crypto pumper channels. Like the crypto content that's staying around is more of the long-term people that still believe in it, like you, and also Chris Coney, right, at Cryptoverse. But I think a lot of these crypto pumpers, I think they went into like, the next thing, either marijuana stocks or, they're pumping. I saw one guy, he didn't know anything about investing or finance. He was a marketer, and he's put, I think, a lot of money in marketing into his channel and grown it really rapidly. And he was pumping Tesla stock, saying, it's going to 500, 600, no real fundamental argument, not talking about any of the competition or something like that. So they've moved on to the next thing to sell.
Yeah, it reminds me of college. I don't know if you had acquaintances like this, but they were always into like, what's the hot spot right now? What's really trendy? Yeah, some place just opened up, and this is more of a phenomenon in big major metropolitan cities like New York City. Some place opens up, and this is where all the cool people hang out, and this is where you got to go. And I would go to these places once in a while, and I'm like, this place sucks. I'm not having fun here. I'd rather just go someplace where I really want to be, and the people are friendly, and a beer doesn't cost $12. So,
exactly. There's a bunch of girls and guys standing around paying like $12 for a drink, and it looks like a bad frat party, but there's like beautiful people like eyeing each other. It's a waste of time and money.
Right. So that's what a lot of these folks do. They're adults now, and they just flit from one thing to the next. It took me a long time to come around on cryptocurrency, and that because when we initially met one another, I was frankly just of the belief that gold and silver are money and nothing else. And it took me a long time to understand the technology of Bitcoin and what does it really bring to the table, and why can it be complementary to gold? And really what I concluded is that it adds something to gold that we didn't have before, which is an accounting information system. And that's really how the manipulators have been able to get away with the gold and silver fraud that has taken place probably ever since we went off the gold standard in 1971. Because we don't really know how much gold and silver there is. And a lot of people are frankly never going to ever ask for it. They think they just own this contract of a ton of gold and they can just have it, they can sell it anytime they want. But the metal really isn't out there. It probably hasn't even been mined yet. And it might, in some cases, may not even exist. So that's why
or there could be the same claim for like a bunch of silver, like multiple claims.
Right.
As we've seen with the bankers, basically, I think it was Morgan Stanley, and I think there was a couple other banks for this. One of the Swiss ones, I think, and they've been fined a bunch for basically having the same bar, like counterclaims, all these different claims. And, look, what just came out recently, right? The guys got caught for manipulating gold and silver. His sentencing was just delayed, I think, to over the summer. And he said in open court that his bosses taught him how to do it. And no one seems to really care anymore.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this entire financial system is one big mirage. And eventually we're all going to have to admit it. And that day is going to be terrible. And that's really why I waded into this space. You were doing a lot before I ever got here, but I felt like it was almost my duty to friends, family, and loved ones to say something because I understand the system better than the average person because of my background as an accountant and studying business, Austrian economics, and forensic accounting. But your average person really, they trust people like Ben Bernanke, Janet Yellen, and Jerome Powell. They're all very well spoken, and they're over the age of 60, and they're so polished. And why would they lie to me? And they've all been funneled into this system. Your nice, safe 401k, so you can retire with dignity. And Dave Ramsey tells me that I need to have 4 mutual funds, and it all sounds great, but it's all built on lies.
Yep.
And that's why we needed something like crypto. But that said, Trace Mayers rolled out this initiative, and I think it's great. On January 3rd, the 10-year anniversary of when Bitcoin started to be mined, I guess it started to be mined January 3rd, 2009. Here we are 10 years later. He's got a proof of keys initiative, and he's encouraging everyone to remove their private keys from these exchanges. If you have any cryptocurrency on exchange, remove it, take control, keep it on your Ledger Nano S, your Keep Key, or your Trezor, and really get control of your monetary sovereignty. And the goal is to see if any of these exchanges are lying to their customers and actually only maintaining a fractional reserve. And this is exciting to me because what other community in the world is able to do this, right? We can't. The gold and silver community can't do this. Okay, fine. Deliver all the metal, right? Like, wouldn't that be great? That's the day we've all been waiting for. Or any other derivative out there. I mean, you know better than I. There's like some trillions and trillions. It might even be like a quadrillion amount of derivatives out there. And they're all based on this flimsy lie that there's actually real resources backing it up. So we're going to find out on January 3rd whether that's the case. And that's another reason why I'm just so excited about cryptocurrency, because people can make the economy, the system, the network prove it. Okay, you say you got this. Well, let's prove it. And that's really the disruptive technology. That's the piece that whether you like crypto or not, you have to be able to appreciate. That is the added value that it's bringing to the world.
So I think the original derivatives number that got us, it got as high as 1 quadrillion or over a quadrillion on a gross basis. But then the Bank of International Settlements and some of the other people that were publishing the report, they started lowering the number because it was too alarming. So they started claiming that, oh, it's netted out, and oh, it's a lot lower than that when it's netted out. But the thing is, with the total gross number, all it takes is like one weak bank like Deutsche Bank or another bank to fail, and then all the other counterparties start to get in trouble. And that's what you're seeing in Europe with the European banks now. So, so Phil, in your opinion, is Bitcoin manipulated?
Definitely. And we're finding out more and more just how manipulated it is. But the good news to that is I think that this is actually a plus for people who are wise stewards and see the value when it's been pounded. So the shorts have really taken control. I told you that story about that guy named Dow who had like the greatest short timing probably in the history of any trader. And we're also finding out that there's all this over the counter purchasing, and then the purchasers are able to flood the market with new Bitcoin, and that smashes the price, and then they can buy it up even more on the cheap. And they knew that they were the ones who caused this in the first place. I think a lot of that was going on. Also, I don't care what anyone says. This Bcash fork on November 15th really did something to the market. You can't ignore the fact that Roger Ver is probably one of the, even if he has sold off Bitcoin over the years, he's probably still one of the biggest whales out there. And maybe Craig Wright is too. And they wanted to have some kind of match to see whose wallet was bigger. And this is really about their egos, right? This is all about domination and control. And I think that, frankly, that's very unfortunate. But you've got a lot of these things going on in this very small market.
I also think, Phil, that Bitcoin was manipulated and the other cryptos were manipulated on the way up too, because from what I heard, I spoke off the record with a pretty large Bitcoin mining company that operates in the United States. And what I was told was, they have a Bitcoin mining operation here in the US, but they have connections all through the space. And what they said was that there's just enormous illegal wash trading on the Asian crypto exchanges. So in Japan and South Korea, there was just enormous illegal wash trading back and forth. In the United States, you'd go to hypothetical. So if you and me decided we wanted to manipulate a market, we would just paint the tape right with higher and higher prices and trade a stock or something back and forth, a little bit higher, right? But we're not actually wanting to own the stock. We're just painting the tape. And basically that's what happened in a lot of the cryptocurrency markets. So as there was manipulation upwards, it was also attracting more people who didn't care about crypto and were just trying to get rich quick.
Yeah. And so I think the argument would be, well, we need this market to be regulated. And hearing those words roll off my tongue, it's hard to say. Maybe that's true. I think that probably would be good for the system in the long run. And like I said, the chairman of the New York Stock Exchange is interested. Fidelity's interested. We got Backed coming online. There was supposedly an announcement with regard to NASDAQ as well. So this thing is going to go mainstream at some point, and that will probably be good for the overall ecosystem. But it sure has been exciting during these times on these exchanges that are totally unregulated. They're all over the world. There's a potential that your Bitcoin could be lost or stolen, and it's really the Wild West. But that created a lot of the big gain opportunities that we saw there. Just one of the things that I want to talk about in terms of the plus side in the long run is something that Trace Mayer is always talking about, is these 7 network effects. And in order, they're speculation, merchant adoption, consumer adoption, security, developer mindshare, and financialization. The ones I want to focus on is this merchant adoption, consumer adoption. There's stories coming out of Venezuela almost every week now about how they are adopting the cryptocurrency Dash as a way to escape the hyperinflation created by their evil totalitarian socialist utopia. And like there was a story last week about this restaurant, Church's Chicken. They started accepting Dash in payment of for food, right, for fast food. And also there's a company, I don't know if it's called Crip or they make a phone called the Crip phone, but they just sold 66,000 phones that have enhanced security to maintain a Dash wallet. So this is the direction that people are going in times of crisis. There are opportunities. And I think Dash is one of these cryptocurrencies that is very well positioned. They've been gutting it out over the last several years. And because of their model, they're able to really unleash these initiatives in the right places. And if you just take a look at Dash today, it's up 32%. Obviously, this isn't normal, and it did fall from a high of $1,600, and it's only $100 now. But I think it could get there again one day, and maybe even further as a result of some of these network effects. When I want to be specific, when Trace talks about them, he's referring to the network effects specifically only to Bitcoin because he is a Bitcoin maximalist. But I like to talk about them in terms of the overall cryptocurrency ecosystem. I think there's just a massive amount of potential, and we're really seeing it live every single day. And if you're not on Cointelegraph or CoinDesk or ccn.com or these websites, and you're not convinced that crypto has a place, just read some of these articles and the way cryptocurrency is being deployed to make everyone's life better in these socialist hellholes.
Well, what worries me, Phil, is that this is, even if people are making money trading crypto or they're protecting themselves for now holding crypto, getting out of the system, is that governments are going to hijack the technology and force us by force, throwing people in prison, taxing exchanges, what they're doing with Coinbase, trying to force them to hand over their list of customers with their real names and stuff into a cashless society like a Fed coin.
Yeah, that's a concern for me too, but it's still a big world. And a lot of countries don't agree on things. You're already starting to see crypto utopias out there that are positioning themselves as the next French Riviera, the next place where wealth is going to come in because they're going to give people an advantage who maybe they were recipients of the wealth transfer in this new cryptocurrency society we're living in. One of them is Malta. Another one is Switzerland, and potentially for U.S. citizens, a place to consider may be Puerto Rico. I know Brock Pierce is a crypto billionaire, and he was recently on the Bad Crypto Show touting all of the opportunities that may be available for crypto millionaires and billionaires to move to Puerto Rico, have tax advantages, and also help out the citizens down there who were devastated by their hurricane a year or two ago. So I think that's something that is really another cause for optimism. There will be places to go in the world. Sure, there'll be totalitarian governments that always try to squeeze the last ounce of net worth from their citizens. But, I don't think that they'll be able to chase everyone everywhere. And there will be opportunity that comes along with the chaos.
Yeah, if you move your hedge fund down to Puerto Rico, I think you don't pay any capital gains taxes. There's a number of high net worth people, especially hedge fund managers and professional traders, stock traders, and trading other markets that have already moved there. So I want to ask you a couple more questions while in the interview. What's your opinion then on Ethereum and initial coin offerings? Do you think that seems to be the thing that the governments are cracking down on the most, right? The initial coin offerings?
Yeah, I think that's a good thing that the government's cracking down, because a lot of these scams were run by fraudsters who had no technology and a plagiarized white paper and no intent of ever rolling out any business that would ever make any money. So yeah, good riddance to them. We don't want those folks around. We don't want their ICOs remotely associated with Bitcoin or any other decentralized cryptocurrency. I've been concerned about Ethereum for a long time. I bought Ethereum around $8, and I didn't ride it up to 1,000 or anything. I traded it for Bitcoin, probably in the hundreds. But I think, excuse me, unfortunately, I think Ethereum could be like an AOL when it's all said and done.
Well, they bet on initial coin offerings, right? And it looks like that's what's getting cracked down on the most.
Yeah. So I personally don't hold any Ethereum, and I haven't for a long time for that reason. I think it might be like a MySpace when we look back, but we'll have to wait and see. I do hold some EOS. I think EOS potentially could replace Ethereum. Back when we were hearing those stories about Ethereum having problems because the crypto kitties took over like 50% of the Ethereum network, Chris Coney was saying, look, if CryptoKitties was being run on EOS, this would hardly take up like a fraction of 1% of the EOS network. So everyone has to do their own research. It's not financial advice. These are my opinions. but I do have 10% of my crypto portfolio in EOS.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for your insights today, Phil. I kept you long enough. We didn't get to talk about a lot of the stuff about personal finance and budgeting, but if I could add one last point here before I let you go, you have some of the main people that have been talking about crypto, the experts in cryptocurrency and Bitcoin space, like Mike Novogratz. I know he's talking his book. He put a lot of money in, but at least his money is where his mouth is. He thinks, and he laid out the case in a Real Vision television interview about 4 or 5 months ago, why he thinks 2019 is going to be a good year for crypto on the rebound. And Mark Yusko, who's a hedge fund manager, he just launched a cryptocurrency index fund, but I think it's $50,000 buy-in for institutions.
Yeah, I think for the average person, it's better to just do your own due diligence, buy yourself a keep key, get yourself a little Coinbase account, or even better, download the Cash app and just buy a little bit of Bitcoin at a time. If that's not for you, then I just bought a friend of mine some silver coins the other day, handed him the roll, and you could see the excitement on his face because he knew he was holding something real. I think silver is still extraordinarily cheap. And if you don't like either of those things, continue to build up a emergency fund with a cash reserve. And even if you don't believe me, you can listen to Alan Greenspan because he said the same thing the other day. Well, so I think a lot of people are going to be moving to cash. They're going to get scared out of this market. And there's nothing wrong with that.
You also have a lot of professional money managers going to cash now. I just listened to another Real Vision television interview with a hedge fund manager that does a lot of short-term trading, and he's in a very heavy cash. I think he was going almost 100% cash. So yeah, he's doing some trading with shorts and stuff like that, but he's not long anything. So, I mean, I've been saying this for a while now that it's always good to hold some cash because then you have cash for opportunity in case something like an asset, real estate, or stocks or something goes on sale.
Right. There's nothing wrong with it. You need dry powder. We're going to be the ones who are scooping things up when people are dumping every stock in their 401k. You know, my opinion is that we're going to see another 50% or more decline in the stock market. It got up to Dow 26,000. 13,000 or lower wouldn't surprise me at all.
I want to thank Phil Kennedy again for his time, and you could reach out to him through his website at philipkennedy.com, PHILIP, not two L's for Philip, or email him at phil@philipkennedy.com. And definitely subscribe to his YouTube channel. He covers Austrian School Economics, precious metals, and also cryptocurrency. Please like this video, share it with friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to the Wall Street for Main Street YouTube channel if you have not already done so. Thanks for helping Wall Street for Main Street pass the 20,000 YouTube channel subscriber milestone despite YouTube censorship. Hopefully, we'll be able to get to 30,000 or even 40,000 YouTube channel subscribers quickly if YouTube doesn't shut down this channel. If YouTube does shut down this channel, remember to also sign up for the Wall Street for Main Street email list that's on the wallstreetformainstreet.com website and will tell you where the videos are going to be uploaded instead of YouTube. Also, if you really like the content and you decide that you want to give a one-time donation, you can go to the wallstreetformainstreet.com website where there's different options for you to do so. Or you can become a Patreon contributor. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to providing my loyal listeners with some of the best information, analysis, and financial education available out there, free or paid, as I work to grow the podcast and also get my educational technology company funded.